Welcome to this Pretty Loaded podcast. Today we have Frank Sharpe. And Frank is not only a friend, but he is an instructor of my husband and myself. Frank has been a firearms instructor for over 20 years and is the founder of Fortress Defense. As a senior staff instructor for Defense Training International, he has trained thousands of citizens, police, and military in the art of defensive firearms and is the author of the DTI Instructor's Standards Manual. Frank specializes in effective instruction of female students and regularly speaks on defensive issues for women's groups and community watch organizations. So Frank, welcome to the podcast.
Glad to be here. How are you?
Doing well. So Frank, interestingly enough, in 2014, after I had my incident where I felt like I was almost going to be assaulted, and I was carrying my gun in my purse. I was holding on to my two daughters' hands when the incident happened. And I quickly realized that I didn't have the training that I needed. My husband found your team and you came out, and after your training, I really felt empowered. You took training to a whole new level. I remember you even saying to me, Beth, why do you think that person was targeting you? And you really brought something up, in my mind. Like there's so much more to who these people target and why they're attracted to certain people. So I just want to thank you for taking my level of confidence with gun training to a new level. And that's why I want to introduce you to our audience, because I think people need more instructors like you.
Well, thank you. That's quite an introduction. And my pleasure. And we were happy to do that for you. And I'm also happy that we formed that and have stayed friends. And it's one of the great things about this is one of our instructors, Trisha, actually works with you now. So that's a positive too, that, everything's grown really nicely with this whole thing.
So why do you personally carry a firearm every day?
I don't carry a gun because I'm a vigilante or I think it's my job to clean up the streets. I carry a gun because to get home to people depending on me to be here tomorrow. And I cannot let somebody remove me off this mortal coil if I can do something to stop it. And that's one thing that I have control over. Lightning strikes and heart attacks and car accidents, they happen. But a crackhead in the parking lot, wanting to shiv me for my last $20, I carry an answer for that. There's no problem.
I think it's about risk mitigation, right? Like, what are the chances that somebody might knock down my door in the night and come in and try to harm my family or myself? Or, for me, if it happens, it was 100% chance. So I don't ever want that to happen to myself or to my family. So personally, that's why I carry a gun, because I do know that sometimes bad people travel in packs, and no matter how fast I am, or I possibly can't get away, or my children can't get away, I know that a firearm changes things
in your life. There's no such thing as 23% raped and 50% robbed and 72% murdered. Those things don't exist. Okay, right. It's either going to be 100% or not.
And I think the year 2020 has shown a lot of people that they might need to know how to protect their own life. And in the past, most people that take self-defense, 80% of them have been assaulted or had something happen to them, and that's why they come take training. But in 2020, it was a different year. We saw crime just go rampant. We saw police being defunded. I think people are really waking up that they need to take care of themselves.
Well, we're all on our own. That's really what it comes down to, and it's been a wake-up call. There's no doubt, and I think that's positive. I think that's going to offer some growth to at least a segment of our population. On the other hand, a segment that's out there doing all this crime and rioting on the streets and burning buildings down, they're getting empowered by it too, because there's no them know or to stop. So these two forces are going to come to a head at some point. So yeah, my recommendation to people is most certainly get armed and trained. You may need it. So,
for the average person out there, how do they know if somebody is a good instructor or not, a good firearms instructor? Because I've had multiple instructors in the past, but are there certain things that you would want to look for to make sure that your instructor is doing?
Sure. I would probably say, first of all, that that's like trying to say who's a good dentist or who's a good doctor or anything like that. I mean, you're going to have to do some
True.
word of mouth and some research and some Yelp reviews, I suppose. But
Right.
uh, for me, I take uh, training from a lot of people whenever I can. We're on the road, we train a lot, we do things, but I try to get into a class two, three, 4 times a year, depending on what budget and time allow. And the first thing that I look for is my instructor carrying a gun? That's the number one thing that I look for. If they're not, um, an eyebrow goes up because I want somebody, if they're going to be teaching me to carry every day, they should be carrying every day. They should be setting the example of what they're going to tell me to do.
Right.
So that's the first visual thing that I do with instructors. Is it egocentric? Are they trying to prove something? Are they trying to show me that they're the be all end all of everything and that I can only follow them and there's no other way to do these things, and everything that they have is gospel and the rest of it's all garbage. And the other thing is, are they trying to get something named after them? That's one thing that I watch out for in this business, because you're nobody unless you apparently have a flashlight technique named after yourself. So, they're all trying to reinvent the wheel and come up with, will be named after them or be known for, with their name attached to it. That's probably something to watch out for there. You're going to have to use your own discernment. Does your instructor care? And there are instructors out there too who maybe have a reputation of being a little rough around the edges, but they still have something to teach you, and I've been in those classes where maybe somebody doesn't speak to you the way you'd like them to or whatever. And for us as students, we have to check our egos too. We have to understand that there's a reason this person's probably been in the business for 30 or 40 years. And there's a lot of knowledge in that head. And somehow I've got to get it out. I'm going to pay my money and go. And, maybe it won't be fun, but at the same time, fun is what you make it, right?
Right. Well, I do remember with your training that you drilled safety, just gun safety into our brains, that I was so confident with how safe I felt. And I mean, I won't ever, forget master grip and just being safe. But the thing that I think you and your instructors did really well was stressing, teaching and then stressing us to a certain point. Because when you get stressed, you actually retain information better. But it was also like real world training almost, because when you're in an event, you are going to be stressed and you have to know how to handle a stressful situations.
Oh, the stress side of this. My time with my students is always limited. I get people who call me all the time. They want me to, they want to hire me for an hour to teach them how to shoot. And it's like, well, I'm not sure that we're going to accomplish that task in 1 hour. And it's hard to even express that without sounding like you just want to make more money from them, because everybody has this illusion that this is easy to do. And it's really not. It's a lifestyle, and it's like any other martial art. You're going to have to spend some time doing this. Now, the nice thing about this specific martial art is I can get people in a pretty good place in about 20 hours. We can do it over a weekend and get the basics and at least send you home with knowing how to practice. I don't have to have you stretching for 10 years till you can do an aerial back kick, where, we can learn how to draw our guns, we can learn how to handle them correctly. And to be honest, a lot of what we teach students is what I call living with your gun. You're going to have to live with this thing every day. You're going to have to carry it. You're going to have to use the bathroom with it. You're going to have it around your children. You're going to have to store it. How are we going to do this? We're stuck in this thing. We've got this mechanical, uncomfortable hunk of metal, and somehow we have to get it on our body, and we have to know how to deploy it if necessary. But more than that, I'm going to take it on and off every day. I'm going to have this in. When we put a gun on and we walk out in public, we really are telling the world, I'm prepared to make life and death decisions. That's a pretty heavy thing. There's a lot more to this than just the mechanics of the gun. We've got to get our mindset right. We have to know the legalities, the aftermath of this. Along with all of this, when you mentioned mindset and the criminal element and all that sort of thing, we're definitely dealing with massively potentially traumatic information, things that will rock people's world and shake them to the core because they've never really thought about it before. the idea of taking a human life, the idea of having your own life threatened, the idea beat up. Most of my students have never been in a fight. They're good people. They live boring lives and they don't go out picking fights.
Right.
Some of my male students have maybe gotten in fist fights in grade school or something like that. Maybe they were on the wrestling team. Maybe they played football. Every once in a while, I get a hockey player. They've actually been in some fights. But most of my female students, especially, have not had to go toe to toe with anybody in any type of defensive situation. And to get that training started is really what we're doing. To finish it, it's going to be a lifetime goal. And the wonderful thing about firearms is they do equalize that with women. And regardless of what the politics and the narrative is these days, there's a physical difference between men and women. There just is. And one of the demonstrations Tricia and I do when we teach women's classes together is I simply put my hand up and I have her put hers next to mine. And it usually looks something like that. And then I make a fist, and then she makes a fist, and her fist is about 2/3 the size of mine. And I explain to the ladies, who do you think can deliver more energy on target right now? There's a reason that male boxers have weight class. 10 pounds, 20 pounds can make all the difference in a fight between men. Now imagine this with women.
Right.
Uh, so I'm a big proponent of women being armed, and sure, martial arts is great and learning how to grapple and do all that stuff is wonderful. And that may be the difference between you surviving a real fight. However, we've got to be honest about this too. Most women don't have this time and they don't have the physical ability to just, I guess, commit to that level of training. And even if they did, we're talking 20 years out before they'll be competent. What are they going to do tonight? Well, I can get a pistol on them in a couple of days and teach them how to do this stuff. So that's our goal, is to try to equalize this as best we can with that criminal element.
And what people need to realize is that, driving a vehicle is more dangerous and difficult than using a gun. But most people don't understand that unless they have correct education on what can go wrong with a gun and where
Sure.
accidents most likely happen.
I find that in-person one-on-one learning is always the best way to do this, because you've got somebody correcting the little minor things that are happening right there. And gun safety itself and how we handle guns, there's no I would put it this way. Our school runs what's called a hot range. And the opposite of that would be a cold range. Now, a cold range is where all the guns are unloaded, even the holstered guns, and you step up on the firing line, you load your gun in front of a range officer, you do whatever the drill is, then you unload it, show that it's clear, and reholster or box it or whatever and walk off the line. That perpetuates the situation. There's two conditions guns can be in, either dangerous or not dangerous. And I don't buy that. I think guns are always dangerous. Thank God. They'd serve no useful purpose if they weren't. But as soon as we start having condition-based training, where we have guns that are unloaded, that means we handle those guns differently. And that creates bad habits. And
Right.
the worst place to see good gun handling is gun shops, because all the guns are unloaded and people are handling them and pointing them at the person next to them. And the guy behind the counter hands you the gun and he hands it to you stocks first, so the muzzle's pointed at him. And it's ridiculous. I go crazy. I can't go in gun shops anymore. I can't. I lose my mind. So I teach my students on what's called a hot range, and all of our guns are loaded. Now, we may unload them to do drills. It's just, as a matter of policy, I do not send my students off to break unless there's a loaded gun in their holster.
Mhm.
And that reduces accidents, because there's no reason other than for immediate self-defense that gun come out of the holster. And on a cold range, you'll see people back in the parking lot. They're waving guns around all over the place. That doesn't happen on my range. When I see a gun out, I know there's a problem and I need to tackle that person. So we pretty much are able to keep the safety stuff where it needs to be, while at the same time teaching people those guns every day.
Right.
It's a very shaky thing for a lot of people the first time we put that loaded gun in their holster. And there's a lot of apprehension, and you can see them, they're nervous. There's a lot of nervous. But by the end of our classes, really 99.9% of our students come through there and go, this was great. I'm so glad I did this. And then I've got a small percentage fraction who maybe pull me off to the side and go, I don't think this is going to fit in my life. And my answer to them is, great. You got your money's worth. You learn that here.
Right.
It's better that you didn't buy a gun and take it home and then just let it sit and then have the accident. You realize now this is too much responsibility than you can chew at this point, or bite and chew. So great, good.
Right.
We learned that lesson too.
Right.
Honestly, guns aren't for everybody. As much as I'm
Agree.
a proponent, I meet lots of people that I don't think should have guns.
I
So,
agree. I agree with you 100% on that. Anything else that you want to just add that you want the listeners to hear?
oh, well, I was hoping we could talk about the criminal mind here a little bit.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
there's there's an instructor in our business who passed away this past year. His name is or was William April, and April spelled with two L's. William was a genius, and I was lucky enough to take a class of his that was called Unthinkable, and it was just 8 hours of learning about minds, sociopaths and psychopaths, and all that interesting stuff, and why they do what they do. Um, After I took his class, I made it known to my instructors and my students from that point on that there were three people that I thought they needed to get in contact with and learn from. One was Masad Ayub, the other is Andrew Branca, and the third was William April. And that's because that would be the holy triad of what you need information wise to understand what it is you're getting into. Uh, Masad Ayub's class comes from the perspective of the defender, and he goes over all the legalities and the way the legal system will treat you and how criminals treat you and how prisons treat you and all that sort of thing, but it's done through your eyes.
Okay.
uh, Andrew Branca comes through it from the prosecutor's eyes. He will explain to you exactly what the legal system, the prosecutor, are going to see in your actions and how they're going to weigh all that. William comes through it from the criminal's eyes. And that was a very enlightening thing for me, even though I'd been doing this for a long time and I thought I had my brain wrapped around how they operated. There was a lot of parts of it I was actually missing. And I'm not sure who's going to replace William, but his videos and his writings have been archived. You can find them online, and I would tell everybody to go study that. But one of the things that he's famous for is he said this: they don't think like we do.
Hmm.
And that's why his class was called what it was, Unthinkable, uh, to the mindset of what they are up to. So I'm trying to put this into a synopsis as best I can. There's two types of criminals out there that we might run into that are violent. They're sociopaths and psychopaths. It's pretty rare that any of us are going to have violence visited on us by a true psychopath. Sociopaths are generally what we're going to be dealing with. Psychopaths are incredibly smart. They have high IQs. They generally blend in with the rest of the population. And they're actually rarely violent. They just usually gaslight people and do mean things to them. But, when they become serial killers and that sort of thing, we don't usually catch them. It takes a long time because they're really smart.
Right.
Sociopaths are just run-of-the-mill street criminals. They're not smart. They generally have criminal records. They generally can't keep jobs. They have drug problems. They grew up in abusive homes. They have all these factors that maybe have contributed into what they do, or why they do what they do. In our case, that's who's probably going to be confronting us in the parking lot. That's probably who's going to be breaking into our house. And what we have to understand is this, and it's what William tried to impress on us. They're doing their job. As far as they're concerned, they're showing up for work. They brought their gun, and they need you to do what they're telling you. And
Hmm.
they chose you because they're very good at their job. One thing about sociopaths is they're incredibly narcissistic.
Hmm.
They think very highly of themselves and their skills. Okay, whether they're good or not doesn't matter, but that's what they think. So William went on to show us a bunch of articles and slides from different events that had happened around the country over the years that he collected. In one, a lady was sitting at a stoplight. A guy walks up with a gun, points the gun at her, says, "Get out of the car." It's carjacking. She complies. She gets out. He gets in. It's a stick shift. He can't drive a stick shift. He turns and he shoots her. Why? What was that accomplishing? He goes on to another story. There's a lady behind the counter at a convenience store. She needs to use the bathroom. She grabs one of the stock boys, watch the register. She walks out of the room. A guy comes in, puts a gun in his face, says, open the register. He says, I don't know how. The guy shoots him. Why? Well, it's really simple. They're doing their job and you're not doing yours. Okay. They're really good at what they do and they have chosen you for a reason. And because they're good at what they do, they couldn't possibly have chosen a bad victim. And when you don't comply, even if it's out of your hands, you're being a bad victim, which means they chose the wrong victim, which means they're wrong. And that couldn't possibly be. Therefore, you must pay.
Wow.
It's a personal insult. That's what it comes down to. And to wrap my brain around the idea of noncompliance being a personal insult, even accidental noncompliance, that was when the light bulb went on in my head. Okay, I get it. These people still have bills. They still need to feed their families. They still have reasons that they need this cash or whatever it is they're doing during this robbery. And we have to either comply 100% or fight 100%. There's no in between on this. There's no middle ground and there's no gray area. And that really helped me understand what are here. You
Okay.
either comply 100% or not at all. So if that helps, and that whole class and what he brought to us, I mean, there's books that'll be written on it. So that hopefully gives you just a little bit here. You look at the lives that most of these people have led. At the time they're attacking you, about a third of them have already served a term in jail.
Right.
Most of them are on probation. Most of them have been in and out of the legal system, hundreds of times. In Chicago, especially the gang members there, they're catch and release all day long with that. But you have to look at the situation that these people grew up in. And I guess another thing that really hit me hard, and I knew this already from a lot of the things that I've been involved in over the years with criminal justice stuff. Uh, the environments that these people come from, everything in them is accomplished through violence. Even the good stuff happens through violence. As soon as they're awake and lucid, everything around them is done through violence. They're exposed to alcoholism and sexual abuse and crime, and they have relatives who are criminals. And it comes down to, if they don't do something somebody likes, they get the tar knocked out of them. And if they want the bigger piece of chicken at dinner, they got to beat their brother up to get it. So even the good stuff happens through violence. That's how they accomplish their goals. And they grow up seeing violence. They probably, by the time they're 5, 8 years old, have already seen somebody murdered. And you're surprised when they shoot you because you didn't tell them it was a stick shift, or you didn't have an automatic transmission in your car like they said you should have. Um, it's just the way this stuff works. And I think wrapping our brains around the idea that they don't think like we do. We're people who live in a different environment. We accomplish our things differently, and we want to sit and we want to have a discussion. We want to tell them why they're wrong and why this isn't going to work out for them and why you're a good person and they shouldn't hurt you. They don't care. That's not going to accomplish anything but make them angry and make them hurt you more. So for the women out there, this is a major thing for most of them to absorb and take in as a possibility, because you're good people and you're nurturing your moms and all the things you do. It goes contrary to where the brain works.
Absolutely. Yeah, and most people function under the truth default theory, and they want to find the good in people. They want to see the good in people, and a lot of times, I tell my students, especially if it's a stranger, why did they pick you out? Why did they ask you a question? Why are they targeting you? Why do they need something from you? And so I try to weigh the whole odds of, you can't just assume, especially with strangers, that they're going to be good.
Yeah, and I kind of defaulted to the Jordan Peterson mindset with this whole thing, that every person is both good and bad in percentages. And everybody can be good and bad at any given moment. At the same time, we have to understand this is a business transaction when they approach us, and we take it far too personally. We really want to talk them out of this or somehow indicate to them how we could be good friends if you would just give me a chance. And that's not what they want. They want whatever it is they want: your car, your money, your virtue, whatever it is.
Right.
That's what they're after. That's where we've got to turn the tables, which is what our pistols are for. And it just is.
Absolutely. So, Frank, where can people find you and your training?
Ah, well, my address isn't published, but meaning if you physically wanted to find me, you can usually
Right.
find the range, my schedule, my website. But our website is fortressdefense.com. If you need to get a hold of me, it's frank@fortressdefense.com. Pretty easy. Our phone number is 708-522-8060. And we have a full group of instructors. There's about 14 of us in various parts of the country. And we travel. Most of my classes are private classes. We set up for groups, so I keep dates open in the schedule every month for that. And our public list will be up in a couple of weeks.